Pastor Adolfo, I want you to listen to this.
With the private jets.
The infamous quote is, Jesus rode into town on a donkey. Why should Kenneth Copeland fly to his next town on a jet? Show me an airline that can keep up with my grandfather's schedule and we'll sell the jet tomorrow. My grandfather's literally 88 years old and is still preaching more than majority of the evangelists in America today.
The mansions.
When people have an issue with the prosperity gospel, they're going to have an issue with heaven. This is in the Bible. It says that heaven is paved with streets of gold and there's a mansion with your name on it.
When you hear people criticize your family's lifestyle, what do you wish they understood about it?
The world calls it karma. The world calls it law of attraction. But when you say, if you sow money, you'll reap money, and you're a Christian, the world wants to call it the prosperity gospel. But the world literally lives their life that way. The Bible calls it sowing and reaping. The Bible says, whatsoever you sow, you shall reap. Joe Dispenza and all these people that are talking about this, the law of attraction and like changing your world with your words, life and death is in the power of the tongue. That came from the Bible.
That's one.
Oh my God.
Of many things I can show you that is happening today that is inundating social media. That's controlling the narrative about like how Christians should be stewards of their money. You have to believe in God in such a crazy way that that you cannot criticize them because it's God's blessing. And I have another one for you because we're gonna talk in a little bit about your book, The Budgeted Believer, and how it all connects with this.
Yeah.
But I wanted to get you acquainted with some of the crazy things happening on social media today.
Man, that video was wild.
It was just a clip. I couldn't bear watching the whole thing.
For those who are watching this, man, that was my first time actually seeing that video. I'm in shock, but at the same time, I'm not surprised. Wow, that's foolishness.
All right, are you ready for the second one?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, this one is even crazier.
And stand in unity with the vision of perfecting church of sowing this seed of $1,000 plus $235 and receiving the blessings to come to all that participated.
Now that's only $1,200.
Yes.
Y'all not listening to what I'm saying.
So yeah, that is what we're living in today.
And this is why people don't trust churches today, because of abuse like that. Like in the first video, you had the young woman who said, "Hey, my grandfather's schedule is crazy, and this is why he has to take all these private, jets and all these flights in order to keep up with his schedule." And my thing is he obligated to take all those preaching engagements? Not only that, too, like we live in a world of online. You could do it on a video call.
You could.
And it's just like, all right, well, you sow money, you reap money. I'm a believer in that, right? It's called investing. But it's just like, okay, we have to be extremely careful, right? Because at the end of the day, you have people who give, okay? And so a lot of that money, and this is my assumption, to be fair to him, to Copeland and to others, right? It's just like, okay, a lot of that money is being sown, is not your money. It's sown by other people's money to buy your jet, right? And so, oh man, it's so dangerous. It's so dangerous. And that's why people reserve giving, because of abuse.
100%.
Unfortunately.
So now we're gonna go into the meat of this conversation, Pastor. And I want to remind folks, and if they haven't seen it in the last episode, you had an encounter with a wealthy young man in Japan, and you told them that you have a background in finance, and you're also a pastor. I want to just remind people that Pastor Adolfo is indeed a finance professional. You have an MBA, you are a portfolio manager, and you also are a man of faith, and you've seen both sides of this issue. And I think in your book, in your ebook that you released, which is gonna drive our conversation today, the budgeted believer. I want to say that you attempt to bridge the gap between biblical wisdom and the real world of finances without the guilt or the hype. I think I read that somewhere, and we're gonna talk about that today. So, Adolfo, why do you think talking about money in church is so uncomfortable, especially after these two examples that we just experienced?
It's a couple of reasons why people find it uncomfortable talking about money in church, right? Number one is you hear all the stories of abuse, and abuse does happen. And I could go on a tangent on this, but let me just put it like this, right? If a pastor who's the leader of the church is bad with his personal finances, he's going to be bad with his congregational finances, period. Right? Because that behavior seeps into other areas in your life. That's number one. And so when you have poor stewardship, it leaves room for abuse. And so when people hear stories or even experience it, they're like, yeah, I don't want to give. Right. So they withhold generosity at that point. I would say another reason is just bad teaching. Right. We have people who are taught to give out of a place of guilt and shame and pressure, and not necessarily out of good stewardship or generosity. Thirdly, why people are reserved to give is because they for some, they're like, okay, where are my finances going? Like if I give, and I'm just throwing out a figure, if I give $50 every week consistently, so it's $200 a month, what are you doing with that $200 that I'm giving you? Where is it going? Is it going back to the community? Are you giving to the poor? All right, I understand that the church has a rent to pay, mortgage to pay, lights to pay, equipment that needs to be upgraded, so on and so forth. So I understand it could go for stuff like that. All right, I just saw a pastor have a Toyota Camry one week and he got a Bentley the next week. You know, where's where's my money going? And like I previously stated before, wealth in itself is not a bad thing. If you're an individual that makes a lot of money and has a lot of money, that's no indicator of your morality. It's no indicator of whether or not you're a good person, whether or not you're an evil person. But at the end of the day, it's just like, okay, I worked hard for this money. Where is it going when I give it to my local community or my local church? And so those are some of the reasons why people like reserve or hold back on giving a church or giving a God, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And you in the book even say that many people carry all this guilt and confusion because how it is framed. Like the daughter of Kenneth Copeland that we watch, the clip on Instagram. She's saying, this is in the Bible. This is what the Bible says. If you sow, you shall reap. Like you shouldn't have a problem with the prosperity, the gospel of prosperity, the prosperity gospel, because this is what the Bible said. You're gonna have an issue. She even said you're gonna have an issue in heaven because the Bible says that we're gonna be walking on gold. And then in your book you said, and I think it touched me so deeply, that you said that we want to honor God, but we also want to keep the lights on in our house, and that is an internal conflict that we believers feel all the time with the current talk on money in church. What do you feel is so conflicting right now in church, these issues?
Well, the reason why it's so conflicted is because we have pastors who are teaching poorly. Because at the end of the day, right, we put hope in the place of good stewardship. In the sense of like, okay, there are moments in my life where I'm going to need divine provision. And that's just a reality, right? There are going to be moments in life where things are going to happen and you're going to need a helping hand, whether it's a loss of a family member, loss of a provider in the house, loss of a job. Things just happen one after another, like, oh man, I lost my job. My car broke down. I'm unhealthy. I need to go to the hospital. I need to pay these bills. Like, life happens sometimes. This is a good teaching, but bad grammar, that life be lifing, right? It just happens. But in churches today, you see hope take the place of good stewardship, in a sense of like, okay, I need a miracle because I'm struggling. But it's like, homie, you're struggling you want God to provide a miracle check in the mail, or someone to say, hey, you need groceries every week? It has to get to a point where you have to steward, where you have to learn how to budget, where you have to tell yourself like, hey, I'm making a decent income, but this is not going to be able to sustain me for the long haul. Let me learn some skills in order to make myself more marketable in the marketplace, in order to generate more money. Let me not be a big time spender. There's no reason why I should buy the new pairs of Jordans every month when I don't have a savings. Things like this, right? Those are the type of conversations that we need to have in church more, in terms of, hey, you need to steward what you have well, versus, oh, if you don't give, you're going to hell. Or if you don't give, you're sinning against God. Or if you don't give, you're against the prosperity gospel. And when you stand before the Lord, and he's in front of you in the streets of gold, that you're going to be in trouble. Like, what kind of blasphemous, foolish teaching is that? So I do believe in giving, right? I do believe in sacrificial giving. I do believe in the principle of the tithe. However, if you're not making your rent, you have bigger issues than giving to the church. And that's what we need to talk about, because we have a lot of members in our community that are struggling, and we got to meet them right where they are.
Now that you mentioned rent, I was in a service once. I'm gonna reserve the name of the church out of respect, because it doesn't edify, it doesn't help anybody.
Yeah.
But it was shocking to me. This pastor got on the altar and started, all emotional and talking about faith and giving sacrificially. He said, there are people here that the only money they have in their bank account is the rent money. God is telling you, give your rent money and see how God will do a miracle. And I'm in my mind, I think the miracle is that I have the rent money in my bank account.
Yeah.
I think what God wants me to be responsible and not play a lottery. It was shocking to me that a pastor would say, if the only thing you have in your bank account is your rent money, you should give God your rent money, because the widow gave all she had, and you have to give all you have to God. I'm like, you're giving that out of context.
Yeah.
Jesus was not talking about, he was giving a comparison about ratio. Like, if you are super rich, it's like saying Bill Gates. I'm going crazy because Bill Gates gave $1,000 to my church. Like $1,000 is a penny for Bill Gates. That was the conversation that God was having. But what is your take on that? Why do we have this situation today? And to our audience, Adolfo, which is not mega churches. This is happening in mega churches. It happens a lot. But I'm also seeing it in small to medium churches trying to use these tactics to raise money. And then what I see also is this, although these pastors are using these tactics, it's not that well off either. They're also, they don't have a retirement plan.
Yeah.
They're broke. When it's time for them to leave the church, they don't want to let go of the position, because that's their only income. Like, what's going on?
Yeah, Pastor Tony, I think the issue is multifaceted, right? There's not one particular thing that's causing these issues. Let me start with this, right? Before this leaves my mind. A lot of the times you hear this, hey, sow your seed. There's a blessing waiting for you on the other side. Instead of sounding like godly principles, they sound like sale pitches. It's just like, hey, let me sell you something, right? I got the snake oil in the back of my pocket for you. It's ready. You just got to give. And it's unfortunate, but these are some of the reasons why we get here, right? So about 35% of pastors are bivocational, meaning that they have two jobs. So they have their ministry, right? Their pastoral ministry, which is one job. And then they have whatever it is that they do to make their serious or more income on the other side. Like, for example, as a pastor, I don't get a cent from my church. All the money that I generate is my income through my job, which I'm a portfolio manager. I have other multiple streams of income as well, but that's a whole nother topic for another day. But in terms of my main income, it's my job. Okay. For some pastors, their only income is the church, right? A good portion, I want to say about like 60% of the pastors that's their only job. And so if their income is predicated on how much they receive from the church and they want to generate more income, that's where pressure giving comes in. And that could be extremely dangerous. That's why me personally, when I knew I had a calling to be a pastor, I told the Lord, I said, hey, look, I'm going to go to school and I'm going to study finance because I don't want to live off the altar. Now, living off the altar is not a bad thing. I think pastors should get paid, and I think pastors should get paid well because they do a lot. Okay. But at the end of the day, I didn't want my message or even myself to be compromised based on the money that I'm receiving from the church. Like, if God gave me a word and the word is strong, I'm going to preach it no matter what, because at the end of the day, nobody's paying my bills. He is. Right. I have this job. And so that's one. So you have pastors who are receiving an income from the church and they want to raise or they want to be able to pay their bills. So they have pressure giving. A second thing is there's about 1,000 churches that close every year. How many are due to financial reasons? So part of the receiving the funds is not only about, hey, I need to pay these bills, but my ministry needs to be affirmed. Imagine if my building closes, then did God truly call me? Did God truly back me up? Was God truly there for me? So now we try to keep this place forcefully open where it's just like, you're not doing your job, and you can't tell your people to give more because you want the lights open, So that's another reason. A third is just bad teaching, because they learn it from someone else who learned it from someone else who learned it from someone else. And so this is how it's always been in my circles. This is just how we do things. And it's extremely dangerous. One of my favorite preachers, Philip Anthony Mitchell, Pastor Mitchell from 2019, he says that the most dangerous thing against the church right now is the American pulpit or the pastor. It's not even the enemy, and it's because you have bad teaching, heresy, all of these demonic doctrines, or just things that are not biblically sound that are being taught in our pulpits that are hurting people. And so we have to be extremely careful. And so those are some of the reasons, just off the top of my head, that comes about. And the last one is and I mentioned it earlier, it's just poor stewardship of your finances, right? I know people that make $200,000 a year and are broke compared to others who only make $50,000 a year and they're doing okay. And it's because, you're generating a lot of income, but you're also spending a lot too. So financially, you're not healthy. You may be healthy in one area, which is generating income, but then you're unhealthy in another area. And so your financial scorecard, which I talk about in the book, The Budgeted Believer, which is a free book, by the way, it's an ebook. If you want to download it,
we're gonna put the link in.
We're gonna put the link below. There's also a
Yeah.
link on my Instagram. My Instagram name is just my name, so you can look it up. There's no gimmicks. I'm not gonna be looking for you if you download it. It's a free book. But I talk about a financial scorecard, and a lot of pastors have an unhealthy financial scorecard. That their income is great, but their spending habits are bad. They have no emergency funds. They have a ton of debt. They're not learning financial literacy. They're struggling in so many areas. And so it shows up in their church.
Why are we not talking more among pastors getting trained on finance?
There's shame to it. Part of it. Many pastors don't even have someone that they could call a friend. let alone a financial advisor. Okay. And so who would you go to have that kind of conversation? And that's why community is extremely important. Unity amongst pastors are extremely important. Brotherhood, right? There are certain things that we go through that as pastors we just understand, right? Because we're in the trenches. And so part of the reason why the pastors don't talk about it is because they don't have no one to talk to. That's one. Number two, it's just like, all right, who do I go to that has this particular skill set that could help me out? And so most pastors, right, are managing the finances of the church because most pastors are wearing multiple hats. Majority of the churches in the United States in particular are about 100 members or less, right? So it's this, you might see these mega churches online, but that's probably like
That's
1
not
or
the standard.
2%, of what the actual church is. If you actually go down Broad Street in Providence, Rhode Island, you'll see probably like 5 or 6 churches on the same street. And all of them probably have about 100 members in each of them. Okay. And so there's someone in the church that probably doesn't have the skill set to manage the finances. So, the pastor being the CEO of the church, for the lack of a better term, he's the one who's going to have to manage it. And it's just like, okay, who could I trust to talk about these financial things without making sure that our church isn't compromised? Right. That's another issue. Like at the church that I serve, we have an accountant. We pay $10,000 a year to manage our finances. So it's not even me who manages it. Who could? It's not even me. And I'm not the senior pastor of my church. Shout out to Pastor Carlos Ramirez. It's not even him who manages it. It's an accountant. And then on top of that, when we make financial decisions, we make it through the executive team within our church. So there are multiple people making the decision who have a say, who have a vote. So it's not like my pastor's coming in as a dictator and saying, hey, I'm going to buy this brand new drum set, even though it's $5,000. I'm going to do it because I want a new drum set. Like, no, like you have to go through a team. And so many churches also lack that structure. But what I've been doing,
it or don't like it, Adolfo, because
I think it's both.
I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot of people a lot of pastors, unfortunately, that they just want to be driven by what they receive from God. And God told me to get into this new building. God told me to believe for this drum set. God told me to believe for this $10,000 cameras. Like it's insane. Like recently at my church, I got a person, my media team approached me. They were like, Pastor, we wanna buy new cameras because we've been streaming with cell phones. I'm like, okay, and which camera you're looking at, and how much do they cost? Well, the best ones that we need for this church, that will be good for this church, will be like something like 3,000, 4,000 a piece.
Santo. How many you need? Like 3 of them?
I'm like, do you think we have a TV? Like a TV channel or something? And then I said, okay, so give me the numbers of how many people are connecting to us online, because they're saying that we need this streaming.
Yeah.
So we must have a huge following there, huge amount of members. And then when they give me the numbers, we average like about 20 or 30 at most on any given service that are connecting online. I'm like, that is not a good decision to make.
No.
We're not going to spend this much money for 30 people to get HD or 4K streaming. So those are the things that I think sometimes we can get emotional, and it becomes, in my opinion, even a competition. This church is doing this, therefore now I also have to. And many times in fact, I've been following this dude, I forget his name.
Not realizing we're on the same team, by the way, but that's besides the point.
That's a whole other point.
Yeah.
But he says small churches shouldn't even stream. Like, make it more about your local church. Focus more about your local church. You can post the sermon after, but you don't have to be streaming your services because everybody's streaming it.
Yeah.
In fact, you might give an excuse to somebody to just be in their PJs when they could come to church and enjoy community. And maybe what they need is not to have that online option. Because you're not Elevation. You're not Lakewood. You're not like... We have a lot of, he said, we have a lot of small churches that are trying to act as if though they are mega churches.
Yeah.
And that's translated to the church spending too.
COVID changed the game when it came to streaming, because there were a lot of churches that closed down, and thankfully for those members who were able to give while they were watching online. And so you have a ton of churches that are using that avenue because, hey, yeah, they're trying to get the word out there. But and that's the thing, right? It's just, and I'm speaking in general terms, right? In the sense of, man, I hope we're not losing the overall mission. My mission is not to make my church name big, or to make my name big, or to be known. My mission is to preach the gospel, right? To spread the word of God so that people could get saved. Period. And a lot of the times it's just like all this extravagant spending because God gave me this vision, and I know we're gonna have 1,000-member church, and we're gonna have this, and we're gonna have that. And so we start moving and spending because of the quote unquote vision that we have, and not really focusing on the mission. Like, yo, forget all of that stuff. Go out there and preach. Like, meet people where they are. Go to the communities, preach, teach, tell people about God. Tell people about the love of God. I think that's so important. And one other thing I want to say real quick before I lose this thought is, and so at my church, I've been the financial advisor for a lot of my members. One of my mentors taught me this. He said, anything outside of GVM, which the name of my church is God's Voice Ministries, GVM, anything inside of your church, they get you for free. Anything outside of your church, you charge. So if so-and-so, my neighbor down the street, who doesn't attend my church, who just knows me as a portfolio manager and wants to hire me as a financial advisor, well, I'm going to charge them for that service. I'm not going to give it out for free. But anybody else who's in my church who says, hey, I'm struggling in my finances, pastor, I need help. We're part of this community together. Like, I can't expect you to sow a seed and then not me teach you about good stewardship. I'll be your financial advisor for free. I also offer that service to pastors as well. Regardless of denomination or church you go to, if you need financial help, I'll gladly assist you on that, because I firmly believe that pastors need to learn how to steward. And so that's why I offer that service. And that's why I wrote the book. The book is simply to give people like a solid foundation on finances, but not only that, like just try to bring people back to generosity, but you can't be generous if you're not a good steward at the end of the day.
Yeah. I think this is a great segue in chapter 4, which you then talk about that is about the heart behind it.
Yeah.
Right? Meaning the heart behind giving. Right? This can be heavy topic. Churches talk about tithing a lot, Adolfo. Sometimes continuously, like all the time. They do a whole series on tithing. And I think you want to convey something in the book, something different than the usual talk about the 10%. And I think you acknowledge, like you said previously, that you believe in tithing, you believe in giving. But then you have a different focus, and you start talking about our heart and our motives. What is it that you convey in the book that's so important about not the number? We focus on the 10%, the 10%, the 10%, but you talk about the principle of 10% and something more important that is a heart posture. Why do you take that approach in the book?
The reason why I take that approach is because I'm trying to teach people that if you give 20%, it doesn't make you the best Christian, and if you give 5%, it doesn't make you a bad one.
Oh.
You understand
Okay,
what
you're
I'm
cooking
saying?
now. Okay, you're cooking
Yeah.
now.
Like if you give 20%, it doesn't make you the greatest. And if you give only 5%, it doesn't make you a bad one. Because at the end of the day, it's Are you giving cheerfully to say, God, you gave me this. Here, I'm giving this back to you. That's what matters, man. Whether it's $1 or 100, you giving to the Lord cheerfully is a beautiful thing, and it's a biblical thing. And that's what I'm trying to get back to. All right. So like I said, I believe in the principle of the tithe. We follow that at my church. But at the end of the day, if you're not managing what you have well, and if you give 10% and you feel angry about it, hurt about it, struggling about it, it's going to put you in debt by doing it, bro. Don't. But if you're able to give 2% and you're able to give cheerfully and you feel like you're blessing the Lord and you're happy that you're blessed, then do it, and then this work our way up, this work our way up of being generous. It's okay. You don't have to start at 10. You could start at 1. It's okay. Right. When it comes to tithing and giving, you'll be surprised how many churches don't show grace in that area. And we need to be graceful. 50% of our country right now, about half of our country right now in the United States can't afford a $500 emergency. Cash. That if I'm not talking about credit card, I'm talking about cash. If something were to happen, they need $500. They got to take it out from somewhere. Half of the country can't afford that. And so it's just like, okay. So as a pastor, if I care about the community, if I truly love people, what does that tell me, and what could I do about it to help fix the problem? That's what matters. That's what matters. And so I don't want to go to tangent on that, but
no, because I think this is perfect. And I'm going to quote something you said in the book. And in your book, you said that in chapter 4, sacrificial giving is biblical, but it must never be manipulated.
Yeah.
Giving should come from faith, not fear. And it must always be paired with wisdom. That really struck a chord. That really spoke to me, because 2 things. One, it made me analyze myself, Pastor Adolfo. I'm gonna be honest. Like I started thinking, like, have I ever intentionally or unintentionally manipulated people to give?
No.
I think the answer is no. I want to say the answer is no. But in church, there are so many subtle things that you can do that they don't even sound not biblical. They sound very biblical. And you can, I don't know. I wonder if inspiration could, if you're not careful, become manipulation, Can motivation become manipulation? And then I've been on the other end too. I'm going to tell you my most painful story. I still cry this today. Adolfo, today, I'm still crying this today. I was in a I was in a church. It was when I still was living in the Dominican Republic. And this guy, so prophetic, and there was an atmosphere. Everybody was hanging from the fence, running in the churches, speaking in tongues,
right? Yeah.
jumping off the windows. I mean, it was crazy. The atmosphere was crazy. And then this dude goes up and be like, we need to sacrifice beyond money. The Bible says that we need to give even our possessions. That the first church were giving their possession, their houses, their property, their blah, blah, blah. And everybody went crazy and just pouring their wallets and watches and whatnot. In that moment, I'm like, maybe God's speaking to me. And my father had gifted me at that time a very expensive Casio, golden Casio. It was a beauty. And in that moment, in the emotion, I'm like, I know if I give this Casio, God is gonna give me a Rolex. Adolfo, I still don't have a Rolex. I'm still crying that watch. That was what, 20 years ago? But it's crazy how we have become, the church has become a lot of atmosphere. And going back to your book, like lack of wisdom. Yeah, sacrificial giving is important. It is biblical. But when you don't pair with wisdom, man, you can be so easily manipulated. And I think this stems from the fact that many churches, I believe, and all that I'm saying is it doesn't apply to everybody. There are many churches doing solid work, but I
Yeah,
believe
doing
we've
great.
moved away from discipleship, and people are just receiving a motivational word on Sundays, but they're not being discipled. They're not learning about the Bible. They're not becoming wiser because of the church. And I think as a church, we're supposed to help people not only go to heaven, but live a better life here on earth.
Not everybody's gonna be a gazillionaire, but you could live
No,
well if you learn how to budget.
you need to go to Kenneth Copeland Church.
I know, right?
You're supposed to.
He probably has an ultimate how to go. You know, I don't know Copeland. I haven't heard any of his messages. Shout out to him. I hope he's not offended, but at the same time, I pray that he's convicted, you know, in the right way. Because people can have bad convictions at the end of the day. But yeah, man, in church, I think I definitely want to end with this, right? In church, we not only have to think about giving and wisdom, we also have to think about legacy. We have to think about stewardship. We have to think about planning. We have to be comfortable in having all of those types of discussions. They're going to be extremely important. And we should not shy from talking about money. We shouldn't shy from it whatsoever, because if you don't hear from the church, you're going to hear from culture. But at the same time, we have to make sure that we are educated financially. And so that has to be extremely important. And the other thing that I wanted to say is this, before I lose my train of thought, is that, you know, if you're going to a church and you don't believe in the mission and the vision of that church, don't give. Don't give. As a matter of fact, go somewhere else if you don't believe in the mission or vision, right? But I find it that when someone truly believes in the mission and the vision of the church, they have no problem giving, right? They have no problem giving. And so don't feel pressured to do it. Don't be manipulated. Please use wisdom. Let the Spirit of the Lord just guide you, not your emotions. And sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. And maybe that's another conversation for another day.
Definitely. Pastor Adolfo, thank you so much. We're going to put the link in the description. There's so many other things that we didn't cover that's in the book, like a very important chapter there that is be the lender, not the borrower, which I want to encourage you to go. Even, you know what? Even if you want to start with that chapter and then go back to chapter 1.
Yeah.
But thank you so much, Pastor Adolfo, and we'll see you next time.